Welcome to While We Were Distracted, the podcast where we explore topics that often get overshadowed in the rush of daily life. Please take a moment to like and subscribe. It really helps.
Okay, so get this. Imagine a December night over Oregon. It's foggy, probably chilly. You wouldn't expect much excitement, right? Well, up above the clouds, things were getting a little strange. Multiple pilots, they start reporting these unidentified lights. And even the air traffic controllers, they're baffled. We've got the actual air traffic control audio recordings from that night. And a news article from the Oregonian Oregon Live. It covered the whole thing. So buckle up because we're about to take a deep dive into what these pilots saw and what might be behind it.
What immediately jumps out at me is how unusual this is. You don't often hear pilots, especially multiple experienced pilots, reporting these kinds of sightings. It's just not something they do lightly, especially knowing the potential skepticism and, frankly, ridicule they might face.
Right, you'd think they'd almost be hesitant to report it. But in this audio, they sound genuinely concerned. Let's listen to this first report.
It's 2 to 3.00. Yeah, that 2 to 3.0 from our position. That's about 20 miles going in circles. Going in circles, he says. Already, that's pretty strange, isn't it? Definitely. And remember, we're talking about trained observers here. Pilots are used to seeing all sorts of things in the sky, from weather phenomena to other aircraft. So for them to report something as unidentified, it's significant.
And it gets even weirder. This pilot goes on to describe these lights, going up and down, moving in a circle, like a corkscrew pattern. Then he says, there's one way up high and one about my altitude. It's like they're playing tag with each other up there.
That's the part that really gets me. Those kinds of movements, especially that corkscrew description, that would require an incredible amount of energy and maneuverability. Think about the G-forces involved in those sudden changes in direction. It's really pushing the boundaries of what we consider possible with current aviation technology.
Exactly. And later, another pilot joins the conversation. He's describing a red circular shape that was zipping towards us and then back out towards the ocean. He emphasizes how fast it was moving. And from his description, it seems like it was covering vast distances in the blink of an eye.
Now, if we're talking speed here, we need to think about the limitations of radar. Even sophisticated radar systems can sometimes miss objects if they're small, moving erratically, or traveling extremely high speeds. So even if there's no radar confirmation of these objects, that doesn't necessarily mean they weren't there.
It's like trying to swat a fly that's teleporting around the room. You know it's there, you see it, but catching it is a whole other story.
That's a great analogy. And it speaks to the challenges of studying these unidentified aerial phenomena. We're often dealing with fleeting glimpses, eyewitness accounts, and limited physical evidence. It's a bit like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing.
Okay, so we've got these strange lights, odd movements, and now let's bring in the reactions from the air traffic controller, because that's where this story takes a really interesting turn, right?
Absolutely. The air traffic controller's response is probably the most telling piece of evidence we have. Let's hear that.
Roger. You are cleared to maneuver as necessary, left and right, to avoid the UFO out there, and all the reports you're giving us are good information. Appreciate it. Think about that for a second. Air traffic controllers, they're all about precision, safety, and following protocol. They don't just throw around terms like UFO casually. This is a huge departure from the norm.
I was thinking the same thing. It's like he's acknowledging that this is something out of the ordinary, something they don't have an explanation for. And it's not just a passing comment either. He goes on to offer the pilot his personal phone number, asking for pictures or videos if he can get any work.
Exactly. That's not standard procedure by any stretch of the imagination. It shows a genuine interest in these reports, almost a sense of urgency to gather more information. Remember, we're not just talking about a single pilot here. Multiple pilots are reporting similar sightings, and the air traffic controller is actively encouraging them to document what they're seeing. You know, this all makes me wonder how often pilots actually see strange things up there. But maybe just don't report them. I mean, until recently, there was kind of a stigma attached to talking about UFOs. It was seen as fringe science, or something to be laughed at.
You're absolutely right. I think we're starting to see a shift in that perception, though, with more high-profile cases coming to light, like the Navy pilot encounters a few years back. There's a growing recognition that there might be something genuinely unexplained happening in our skies.
It's like we're finally taking off the blinders and admitting that we don't have all the answers.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We still need to consider other possibilities, right? I mean, couldn't these lights be something more mundane? Maybe some unusual atmospheric phenomenon? Or even a flock of birds reflecting the city lights in a weird way.
Well, that's where critical thinking comes in. We have to weigh the evidence and consider all the possible explanations. In this case, the erratic movements, the extreme speeds, and the multiple corroborating reports. They make those more mundane explanations less likely, but not impossible. Okay, fair enough. But let's talk about that news article from the Oregonian Oregon Live for a moment. They broke this story on December 12th. Just a few days after the incident, it basically lays out everything we've heard in the audio. Multiple pilots seeing strange lights, the FAA confirming the reports, the whole 9 yards.
And it's important to remember that this wasn't just some local news blurb. This story went national. People across the country were reading about these strange lights over Oregon.
It's almost like this event brought the UFO UAP discussion into the mainstream. But what does that term UAP even really mean? It feels like it's replaced UFO in a lot of the more serious conversations these days.
That's a great observation. And yes, UAP, which stands for unidentified aerial phenomena. It has become the preferred term in many scientific and government circles. It's a more neutral and inclusive term, acknowledging that these objects might not necessarily be flying or objects in the traditional sense, and it moves us away from the extraterrestrial baggage that the term UFO carries.
Say it.
It's like widening the net, being open to a broader range of possibilities, right? It could be anything from advanced drones to some sort of natural phenomenon we don't fully understand.
Exactly. And that's why I think this shift in terminology is so important. It allows us to approach this topic with a more scientific and open-minded perspective.
Okay, but let's go back to those pilot descriptions for a moment. They keep using words like zipping and corkscrew. It almost paints this picture of something darting around, defying gravity, moving in ways we just don't associate with human-made aircraft.
That's one of the most intriguing aspects of this case. If these objects were indeed moving as the pilots described, it raises some fundamental questions about our current understanding of physics and technology. Think about it. To achieve those kinds of speeds and maneuvers, you'd need to overcome immense gravitational forces and inertia. We're talking about technology that's potentially leaps and bounds ahead of anything we've developed. It's almost like we're peeking into a future we haven't even imagined yet. But it's not just about the future, is it? I mean, some people are convinced that these UAPs are evidence of extraterrestrial visitation. They point to these seemingly impossible movements as proof that it's something beyond human capabilities.
And those theories certainly can't be dismissed outright, but I think it's crucial to approach this with a balance of skepticism and open-mindedness. We need to consider all possibilities, from the mundane to the extraordinary, while remaining grounded in scientific principles.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we start to separate fact from fiction? To sift through the noise and get to the truth about what's really happening up there?
Well, for starters, we need more data. Relying solely on eyewitness accounts and anecdotal evidence just isn't enough. We need to invest in sophisticated sensor technology, improve our radar capabilities, and develop new methods for tracking and analyzing these phenomena.
It's almost like we're building a new branch of science,
Right.
UEPology or something like that. We're developing the tools and the language to even begin to understand what we're dealing with.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And it's not just about technology. We also need to foster a culture of open communication and collaboration among scientists, researchers, and even government agencies. We need to break down the silos and share information freely if we truly want to solve this mystery.
It's like putting together a giant jigsaw puzzle,
Yeah.
but everyone has different pieces, and they're all afraid to show them to each other.
That's a perfect analogy, and it highlights the challenges we face. But I'm optimistic that we're moving in the right direction. The fact that we're even having this conversation, that we're acknowledging the possibility of something truly extraordinary is a huge step forward.
So what's the next step in this investigation? What happens to those pilot reports? Does the FAA just file them away in some dusty cabinet labeled weird stuff?
Hopefully not. I would imagine that the FAA will conduct a thorough investigation, interviewing the pilots involved, analyzing any available radar data, and looking for any other corroborating evidence. They might even consult with experts in atmospheric phenomena, aviation technology, and even, dare I say it, astrophysics.
Astrophysics. Now that's getting really interesting. Are we suggesting that these UAPs might be, well, alien spacecraft?
I'm not suggesting anything definitively, but I think it's important to keep all options on the table. If these objects are displaying capabilities that defy our current understanding of physics, we can't rule out the possibility that they might originate from somewhere beyond our own planet.
Whoa, that's a big leap. But I have to admit, it's kind of thrilling to think about it, isn't it? The idea that we might not be alone in the universe, that we might be witnessing something truly groundbreaking.
It's certainly a thought-provoking idea, and it goes back to what we were discussing earlier about the importance of approaching this topic with a balanced perspective. We need to be both skeptical and open-minded, rigorous in our analysis, yet willing to entertain possibilities that challenge our preconceived notions.
I'm starting to feel like we're on the edge of something really big here. Like we're standing at the precipice of a new era of discovery.
I agree. And it's exciting and a little bit daunting, all at the same time. We're venturing into uncharted territory, and we don't know what we might find. But that's the beauty of science, isn't it? It's a constant quest for knowledge, a journey into the unknown.
Okay, I'm officially hooked. I need to know more about what happened that night over Oregon. Those pilot reports, the air traffic controllers' reactions, the national news coverage, it all points to something truly extraordinary.
And remember, this is just one case among many. There are countless other reports of UAPs from all around the world, each with its own unique details and mysteries. It's a vast and fascinating field to study, and we're only just beginning to scratch the surface.
Well, listeners, I don't know about you, but my mind is officially blown. What started as a seemingly ordinary night over Oregon has turned into a deep dive into the unknown. And honestly, I'm loving every minute of it.
It's certainly been a fascinating journey, and while we may not have all the answers just yet, I think we can all agree that the skies above us are a lot more interesting than we might have previously thought.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some of the key takeaways we should keep in mind?
Well, I think the most important takeaway is that we need to take these UAP reports seriously. We can't just dismiss them as hoaxes or misidentifications. There's a growing body of evidence suggesting that there might be something truly unexplained happening in our skies, and it's worth investigating.
Right. We need to approach this with a balance of skepticism and open-mindedness. We need to demand rigorous scientific investigation. But we also need to be willing to entertain possibilities that challenge our current understanding of the world.
Exactly. And I think the Oregon case is a perfect example of that. It highlights the need for better data collection, improved sensor technology, and more open communication and collaboration among researchers and government agencies.
And it's not just about satisfying our curiosity. There are real-world implications here too, right?
That's
if these UAPs are advanced technologies, whether they're terrestrial or extraterrestrial, it raises questions about national security.
Absolutely. If we have objects operating in our airspace with capabilities that exceed our own, that's a significant concern. It underscores the need for continued research and development in areas like aerospace technologies, sensor systems, and even artificial intelligence. We need to be prepared for whatever the future might hold. And understanding these UAPs is a crucial part of that.
So it's almost like a wake-up call, right? It's a reminder that we can't afford to be complacent. We need to keep pushing the boundaries of science and technology to stay ahead of the curve, so to speak.
I couldn't agree more. And it's not just about military applications. Imagine the potential benefits if we could understand and harness the technologies behind these UAPs. It could revolutionize transportation, energy production, even space exploration.
It's like we're on the cusp of a technological revolution, and these UAPs might hold the key. But it's also a bit unsettling, right, if we're being outpaced technologically. It raises some existential questions. Who are these other players?
Yeah.
And what are their intentions?
Those are questions we don't have answers to yet, and that uncertainty can be unsettling for some. But I think it's important to remember that throughout history, humanity has faced the unknown and come out stronger on the other side. This is just another chapter in that ongoing story.
That's a good point. It's a reminder that we're adaptable, that we're problem solvers.
Yeah.
We've faced challenges before, and we'll face them again. But this time, the challenge might be coming from beyond our own planet.
Perhaps. But regardless of the origin of these UAPs, I think this is an opportunity for us to re-examine our place in the universe. It's a chance to expand our understanding of what's possible, to push the boundaries of our knowledge, and to maybe even redefine what it means to be human.
It's a big universe out there, and we're just starting to glimpse what might be lurking in the shadows, and that's both terrifying and exhilarating.
Exactly. And I think that's the perfect note to end on. A sense of wonder, a thirst for knowledge, and a healthy dose of humility. We don't have all the answers, but the search for those answers is what makes life so fascinating.
Well said. And for all of you listening out there, keep looking up, keep asking questions, and keep your minds open to the possibilities. Because the truth, as they say, is out there, somewhere.
If you enjoyed this episode of While We Were Distracted, be sure to watch the video that inspired it. Please take a moment to like and subscribe. It really helps.